Welcome to the Unexceptional Moms podcast. This is episode 21. We are here to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day. I'm Erin Lorraine.
And I am Ellen Stumbo. And our freebie today is the 31 facts on Down syndrome. So if you go to www.ellenstumbo.com/episode 21, the number 21, that's where you're going to find it.
It's your name, Ellen. It's not that hard.
I forgot my website. ellenstumbo.com/episode 21. Bright orange button, 31 facts on Down syndrome. So, World Down Syndrome Day. It's
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
We're taking this on.
Yeah. So, but when you listen to this today, Tuesday,
yes,
3/21 is World Down Syndrome
World
Day.
Down Syndrome Day.
And so we thought that we would do a mini episode. So we're not going to be doing a long episode. Who knows? It might turn out not to be a mini episode after all. That's the plan, though. And we just wanted to talk about celebrating Down syndrome. And not necessarily celebrating kids with Down syndrome despite of their delays or intellectual disability or limitations, but how even those things that maybe the majority of the world would see as bad or as less than, those are things that are a part of Down syndrome that we can celebrate as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So before we had even started recording, Erin mentioned that there are things her daughter does that are, you said, cute and funny.
Yeah, I was saying, so we have two older boys and they're typical. And when they were growing up around age 2, they did everything they said was so cute and adorable and funny. And anyone who's a mom knows that stage, and they grow out of it. And it was kind of a bummer to me because it was such a sweet time. And I was just telling my husband the other day, Anya is going to turn 10 in May, and she is still in that phase. And I don't know when it's going to end, but everything she says is hilarious and she's so cute. And we get so much laughter from her, but that really is because of her delay.
Mm-hmm.
But it brings great joy to people. It brings great joy to her because she loves being hilarious.
Yes, so does our daughter. You know, I feel like we live in a world that praises intellect over everything else.
Yes.
And compassion and kindness, those things don't matter as much as an IQ. And,
right.
You know, Down syndrome, part of that is an intellectual disability.
Yes.
But I feel like there are some really great things that we can celebrate about an intellectual disability, as weird as that may sound.
Mm-hmm.
But there are good things, you know, there are things that we can celebrate about it. And I think about my daughter in particular, who has Down syndrome, and the innocence that she has because of that I really cherish that.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the only kid that on Saturday mornings will come and get in bed with me just to talk and to go through her birth story. And we go through it over and over again. And she'll talk about her favorite movie and who she likes and her life. And that connection that's really sweet and really innocent, but we still have that. And it's something that I love about her. And I don't know if I ever wanted to stop.
Right, right. And we make jokes sometimes, you know, sometimes parents say when they first found out that their child had Down syndrome, you know, one of their first questions was like, are they going to live with me for the rest of their lives?
That
right.
Yeah.
And I know full well that Miss Sassy Pants Anya is going to be the one going, Mom, I'm out of here. She's going to want her space. She's going to want to live her life. And I'm going to be going, don't leave me.
Absolutely. When Nicole started typing her name, I joked with Andy and I said, we should type a contract where she commits to never moving out. Like she's going to live with us forever. And of course we would never do that. But it's one of those things that because she has an intellectual disability, you know, I don't know how independent she will be yet. Mm-hmm. I also think my daughter will want to be independent and she might not want to live with us forever.
Absolutely.
However, the idea of me being very involved in her life forever, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I celebrate that. And maybe you have to have a child with Down syndrome or maybe other disabilities to understand that it's not a burden, you know, because some people think of it as a burden and it's not.
Well, I was just having dinner with someone the other day who said they were so surprised by our family. They had just gotten to know us because when they were pregnant with their child, what do you say? As long as it's healthy, right?
Yes.
And people get genetic testing and all kinds of stuff to make sure nothing is wrong. And they just kept saying, and you chose it. But not only did we choose it, but we love it.
Yes.
Right? I mean, quite frankly, both of my girls' disabilities are why we adopted them. So to me, that's something to be celebrated. It brought them into our family.
You know, that brings a good point. When Nicole was born and she had Down syndrome, you know, I went through the period of time that you wrestle before Facebook was a thing, or at least a thing for adults.
There was a time before Facebook?
College students.
We're so old.
I know. And I went into a forum, Down Syn. Anybody who had a child with Down syndrome maybe at some point was familiar with the Down Syn forum. But I remember going there, Nicole as a baby, and all these parents who had a biological child with Down syndrome, they were adopting other kids with Down syndrome. And my first thought was, you already got one, why would you do two? Mm-hmm. Because at the time, I didn't understand. Now, I totally understand where they were coming from. But I think Down syndrome cannot be this scary diagnosis that unfortunately the world and maybe some professionals make it out to be, because a lot of parents who have kids with Down syndrome are choosing to adopt even more kids with Down syndrome.
Yeah, we would.
So, oh yeah, I think we would too, except my kids are older and I don't know if I want to start with a baby or with a younger child. We're finally independent.
I think, though, something that's important to say in this conversation is there are some moms out there and they're not ready to celebrate Down syndrome. Yeah. You know, maybe they just got the diagnosis, or what is often commonly seen is a dual diagnosis. And sometimes I hear a lot of people say that, you know, you see autism and Down syndrome together a lot. And a lot of people will say the Down syndrome is the easy part, but maybe they're in a situation where they're not ready to celebrate Down syndrome and appreciate. And that's okay. That's an okay place to be.
It is. We all have to go through our feelings. And I know, Erin, for you, because you guys adopted, it's different. But for many of us, when it was not your dream and your plan, right, and you feel blindsided by it, there is a period of grieving, mm-hmm, and recognizing that life is going to be different. It's not what you expected. It's letting go of dreams. And during that time, letting go of dreams feels like you don't have any more dreams. It's letting go and you feel like, what do I have now? It takes a while to recognize, oh, you do get to have dreams for your child. They're just different. They're mm-hmm, not better. They're not worse. They're different. And in that period, it is hard to see the good. And it's not, I shouldn't say just see the good. It's hard to celebrate because our emotions, we have to work through those in order, yes, to be able to celebrate and see the good and grow in understanding.
And just one more time, I'm going to plug Sunshine Down, because if you're feeling that way and you need to read something from someone who understands where you are, you need to read Sunshine Down by Jillian Marchenko, because she went through the pits of despair because of her daughter's Down syndrome diagnosis. But it's filled with hope.
It is filled with hope. And they adopted.
And they adopted another child who has Down syndrome and autism. And again, that brings whole new challenges.
Right.
You know?
Right. And we've had Jillian. We talked to her, mm-hmm, about mental illness, which
is that still our most popular podcast?
It is still our most popular podcast.
So if you haven't listened, go listen.
Yes. So limitations. I know that also talking about limitations is not popular, and we often talk about disability as overcoming disability and despite disability. And I've learned enough from adults with disabilities that they don't, that's not how it works. You know, there's no despite, mm-hmm, disability or overcoming disability. Just like I don't do things despite the fact that I'm Mexican or overcoming my Mexicanness, right? I mean, it's part of their identity. Disability is part of their identity. It doesn't define who people are, and Down syndrome doesn't define our kids, but it is part of their identity. And I think that's a reason for me to celebrate on Down Syndrome Day, because Down syndrome is something in my daughter that I really do cherish.
Yeah, me too.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not less. It's not more. It's part of who she is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think in the limitations that maybe we live with, we've learned to thrive, and we've learned to enjoy life in a different way, and we've learned to trust in God. And
don't you feel like, and so much of what we're saying is not exclusive to Down syndrome. We're just using that because tomorrow's World Down Syndrome Day.
Today.
Yeah. World Down Syndrome Day. So it doesn't just apply to Down syndrome, any of this, but specifically, and Ellen, what was I going to say? You totally messed me up.
I don't know. Maybe
Give me a second. No, not coming to me. That's a first. Okay.
First.
I am officially old.
You were going to say that if people have not left a review, they should leave a review.
That's what I was going to say. That's your job, to pester people about
I just said it. I don't think I should say it at the end. People, leave us a review, please.
Okay, if it comes back to me, I'll let you know. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was brilliant.
Everything you say is always brilliant, Erin.
Right. Okay, sorry.
So everything is not about Down syndrome, but we're celebrating Down Syndrome Day.
Yes.
And maybe this is a good time to talk about the fact that disability is not scary. And it's not, I used to think it was scary, and I found out that it's not. And I found out that some of the people that I enjoy the most have some connection to disability. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a lot of good things in disability and things to be celebrated.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a people trait. Some people have Down syndrome.
Yes.
So why would we not celebrate Down syndrome?
Right.
And we still need awareness. There's people that still don't know about Down syndrome. And I plan on talking to my Spanish students about Down syndrome. So,
well, I taught public speaking to a group of high schoolers, and they all know about Down syndrome. We looked at a TED Talk with a girl with Down syndrome.
I remember. Mm-hmm.
And they hear about Down syndrome, and you don't use the R word in my classroom.
Oh, well, remember, I had that happen in my classroom too.
Yeah. So my kids all know that crazy woman who loves Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's important. And I find it interesting that in March, so on March 21st, it's World Down Syndrome Day because 3 copies of the 21st chromosome, but the Spread the Word to End the Word also happens during March. And it's always a couple of weeks before Down Syndrome Day. And March is cerebral palsy awareness month, which you and I should know about this. Did you know this?
Yes, I did. March.
Well, maybe our next podcast needs to be on CP.
We can absolutely do that.
Mm-hmm. So anything else to add? I think for the first time, I'm done just sharing.
We're speechless.
Day. We're speechless. It's a great show.
It is.
It really is a great show.
Yeah, no. I totally lost everything now, and I'm completely useless. So
for people listening, this is life. And sometimes we have overwhelming days.
Okay. And true. The reality is we were both discussing right before we started this podcast that we're both working part-time jobs from home right now. And it's challenging.
It's really challenging.
It is challenging. So I'm slamming work in between making podcasts and getting ready for a neurology appointment and a therapy appointment and all these kind of things. It's hard work. And my brain is gone.
Yes, it happens. And we're getting old.
It's the truth. Yes.
I called my sister, my little sister just turned 23. So, I could be her mother. And she's like, wow, if I'm 23, Ellen, you're so old. I was like, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Well, talk to me when one of your kids is graduating from high school and going to college
Right.
because, yeah.
See, that's why I like the fact that Nicole has Down syndrome. She probably won't graduate until she's 21.
Good point.
So I get to keep my baby for a little bit longer. So we won't be empty nesters right away. And who knows, because she might not move out right at 21. She might be.
Not if you have her sign a contract.
Yeah. We can build an apartment in her basement, or
you do that.
They have like the in-law.
A tiny house.
Yes.
Put a tiny house in the backyard.
I would. That's what I want to do.
Except Larry keeps threatening to move in if I do that.
So then you'll get to stay home with the girls and he gets to have his man cave. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thanks everybody for joining us.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, I'll say, so we want to talk about CP coming up. We also are going to be doing siblings coming up, which we've been talking about for a long time. And we're really excited to get our kids together on a spring break and talk siblings. Is there anything else you can think of that's coming up?
We talked about accessibility. We just
talked
about doing accessibility issues.
Yes.
And another thing that was requested, and we are trying to find hopefully a good guest for that, is to talk about guardianship and what to do when your kids get older and you need to file for guardianship, which, Erin, both you and I are going to be doing sooner than we want to.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming up.
And if you have any ideas for the podcast, send them our way.
Yes.
And
we'll see you next time.
Okay, I'm going to say one more time. Leave us a review.
Oh, gosh. Goodbye, Ellen.
Bye, everybody.